Greetings, folks, and welcome to Gig Gab, the show for working musicians, episode 434 for Monday, June 17th. Bring your cat to work day 2024. Greetings, folks, and indeed, welcome to Gig Gab, the show, as I said, by, for, and about working musicians. Here today in Durham, New Hampshire on Bring My Cat to Work Day. I am Dave Hamilton. I didn't bring my cat to work, but if you're watching the video, you can see plenty of cat hair on my black t-shirt, so I think I guess I did bring him to work. Today, I'm really stoked because we have my friend Crisco joining us today. Crisco, I met when he was playing drums on the road with Bella's Bartok. When we played with them a few years ago, we shared kits. Well, mainly I played his kit, and he was very accommodating and a great guy, and we've stayed in touch. And Crisco, you've got an interesting career and path that I think would be inspiring and interesting for our listeners to learn about. So thank you for taking your time today and coming on the show with us.
Yeah, for sure. I'm the cat that you brought to work today.
You are the cat that I brought to work today. There you go. Love it. Love it. That's great. That's great. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of the evolution of your career and how you've done things. Like I said, it was, about a year and a half ago? Is that right, that we played together?
Yeah, it was
those Bella's gigs?
it was it was April of 2021, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That might make sense. I'll buy that.
No. April of 2022.
22. So it was 2 years ago. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yep, that's right.
We had two shows together, right? It was first in not Portsmouth. It was Newmarket.
It was Newmarket at the Stone Church, New Hampshire.
And then it was Portland, Maine the following day.
Correct.
Yeah, yep. And so I believe that was the first, if I'm not mistaken, that was the first week of April in 2022. Yeah. So sorry, not to derail, but
no, it's fascinating. And I know why you remember, or at least part of why you remember this stuff, because in addition to being the drummer in the band at that point in time, you were at least the on-the-road logistics coordinator from what I gathered from our conversations, and mainly watching your conversations with your bandmates backstage. They were asking you where you were staying on any given night, and the whole thing. Yeah. So let's start there. Keeping a band on the road, and I guess we should say that you have evolved from that. You are no longer playing drums in Bella's, and I want to get into the evolution of that too, but because I think it was all a very happy sort of parting and evolution. So yeah, because we just played with your former bandmates the other night over in Concord, which was amazing. And we'll talk about that too. But like keeping a band on the road and managing those logistics, that's a heck of a job to have to do, and coordinating hotels. And so how do you go about doing that? Like, were you planning the dates of the tour as well, or were you working with a manager to do that kind of thing? Talk a little bit about this.
Yeah. So, man, I feel super fortunate to step into this type of position, management, because of the experiences that I've had for the past 10 years just as a touring musician.
Yeah.
I feel like as someone that was driven by, not only showing up to a venue to just set up drums and play drums, every good touring band at a certain level is going to have a tour manager. And we had a tour manager. He was doing our merchandise for us for a little while too. And it's definitely, is driving the van, is setting up the merch, is kind of making some spreadsheets, and, trying to help with logistics, like places to stay, et cetera, thinking ahead of time for, thinking ahead of time for those types of things, as well. like in planning. But at a certain point, we kind of like, those people come and go. So there are
Yep,
people in the band that always have to assume a lot of those responsibilities. And ever since I joined the band, I've always assumed those types of responsibilities because I like gravitate towards it. It's something that
yep.
I naturally am kind of already good at.
I think it's a
And one of
drummer
the,
thing. I
it
don't
could,
know.
it's,
Like there's a
I've seen it with
logistics,
so many other drummers too,
right? Yeah. Yep.
and every musician, like every single one of us, like me, being a musician is like, God, our brains are so talented. Like we're just processing so much information at once. But I
For
do think
sure.
there is something with drummers where we're unique in that sense, where like, we're using four limbs at the same time. There's a lot of
Yes.
coordination kind of going on there. So who
I
knows?
call it uncoordinated coordination.
Yeah, I like that. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, without going off on too much of a tangent, um, I I just feel fortunate that like I'm not coming into being like management or booking agent or something without any of that experience. I mean, having all of that 10 years, like I said, years of experience, is making like stepping into management and you know ultimately making this decision to step into management like that much easier.
Yep.
Um, so to answer another one of your questions, no, I mean we work with a booking agent, so I'm not booking.
Got it.
Luckily, I
Yep.
and that's not something that I want to do. But I work closely with booking agents and always have too. Um, so that's easy. The agent books the shows, and then pretty much as soon as that's done, like their job is done. Everything after is all me. So um, you know everything from making sure that all of the venues teams get what they need, whether it's like socials, advertising, website, all that kind of stuff, making sure all the proper things are in place for just getting the show promoted and just getting eyes on the show. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah.
So those are, to me, those seem like the simple things, but I guess to some people listening that don't know a lot about this stuff, like, yeah, those are some of the things, like the first steps. Um, and then, just as far as like, on the ground stuff, like, obviously the band has a tour manager in Asher now, right? Asher's kind of been like TMing
Got it.
post pandemic. Even when I was in the band, they were kind of like on the ground TM. We were like a two-headed dog.
Sure.
Um, but in an effort to make a lot of
And just for folks listening, Asher is the one of the lead singers and the founding member, as I understand it, of the band Bella's Bartok. So, yep.
correct, yep. And so, yeah, in an effort to take a lot of responsibilities off of Asher's plate, which was one of the things that I wanted to talk to Asher, or one of the things that Asher and I talked about rather together when I told him that I could definitely take over management, and wanted to take over management, was that I wanted to lighten their load a little bit. It's
Right.
like at the
Right.
end of the day, you're the performer. You shouldn't have to have so many of these responsibilities, like advancing shows and talking to promoters and getting numbers for all that kind of stuff. It's kind of the reason that we hire staff in the first place, right? Like musicians we want to be creative. We want to write music. We want to play music. We want to tap into that part of us that like provides that for our just for people that are coming to shows, whether they're our
Yeah.
fans or not.
Yeah. Right.
um and so I really wanted to kind of, I've been working with Asher for 10 years. I really wanted to give Asher the space to kind of be that creative, that engine that's just kind of playing shows, but also pumping out material, which is all they want to do. And so when you put a computer in front of a person, it's kind of just like, man, now I'm doing all this work. I don't have time to write songs anymore.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for me.
Spreadsheets versus songs, right?
Yeah. It's like you can have your song ideas in a spreadsheet, but like
Well,
all
that's different. Yeah.
but I, kind of like tying it together. We a big thing that's super important for me as a former bandmate, and then even now as someone who finds themselves like kind of handling some more of the finer details and like running aspects of the business. My biggest motto is always play to like our strengths,
Yep.
and if my strength was always back then when I was in the band, and even now as a manager, like handling a lot of these like emails, logistics, being in front of computers and stuff like that, that's my strength. I'm going to do that. I'm not going
Right.
to force someone else to do that because we want to have, a good distribution of labor. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe someone is really good at doing the merch, so okay, someone does the merch. I'm not going to force someone to do the merch because there's a hole and it needs to be filled. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers just a couple of the
No,
first questions off the bat.
no, it really does, and you've helped kind of paint the picture of that evolution. So you played in. How long ago did you make this jump from drummer to manager only? And I realized you were doing some management, obviously, while you were also the drummer. But
Yeah,
when did you stop playing drums full time in the band?
that would have been New Year's Eve was my last show, so January 31st of 2023.
Oh, okay,
So
so fairly recently.
yeah, yeah.
Got
I
it.
joined. I joined in 2014, and the band had only been a band for four-ish years. And it's like it was exactly what any group of friends getting together and starting a band was. It was just we're 18, 19, 20 years old, and we all kind of go to college together. Some of us grew up together, and we live in this area. Let's go play these local venues. For
Yeah,
us, it's Northampton, Massachusetts, and we went to UMass. I wasn't in the band at the time, but before I was in the band, it was this kind of like, okay, yeah, let's go play the Iron Horse, or let's go play this UMass college party, or let's go play this friend's backyard. And it was very
yeah,
very kind of like located to just the area.
makes
And
sense. Yeah,
when I joined, it had been because some of the people that were in that band wanted to naturally. It was rated fresh out of college for a lot of them. They wanted to go off and do different things. Some of them moved, some of them got married, blah blah blah, whatever. And so it left Asher and some of the other people in the band at the time with this, these holes positions to be filled. So that was 2014. So that was 10 years ago.
wow,
And we
wow.
got a booking agent like I want to say, God, if that was August of 2014, like 7 or 8 months after that, we got our first booking agent. And then it's just, we spent all of 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19. So 5 years just like, growing into what Bella's is now and ever growing, right? Like we're still on that trajectory. There's no
Yep,
plateau. We're just always trying to kind of reach those next markets, sell out those next, 500 cap venues, 1,000 cap venues, whatever. But,
yeah,
the
yeah,
pandemic was hard. The pandemic took so much steam out of every artist on every tier. I mean, up to like the biggest artists. We all know the story.
yeah,
But now looking into 2024, and thinking about 2025, like 4 or 5 years after that had happened, we're still rebuilding. There's still so much growth to kind of like be made. So
yeah. Yeah, no, we were just talking about it on a show about 2 weeks ago, how the pandemic, like bands that I'm in, it took until basically, the end of last year for me to realize, oh, okay, like I was in 3 bands pre-pandemic, Bitter Pill being one of them. Bitter Pill's the only one that's really kind of survived in any functional gigging form. The other ones had fits and starts post pandemic, but everybody was sort of on different pages. And finally, we had to sort of take a step back and realize, well, wait, these bands are actually like not happening, But it's hard, right? Because everything stopped, and so bringing it all back together. And I think Bella's even had. I remember when we played in April of 22. Talking with you guys, and it was like, oh yeah, no, like Julia's new since the pandemic because there was somebody else that moved on to other things, and it happens, right? It's normal. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, that was a big part of it. And yeah, I mean, that was so 22 was such an interesting time. 21 was so interesting because it was like, oh my God, things are happening again. So when we were
yeah,
kind of starting to start up again and get things going, 21 was okay. We were like seeing a lot. I mean, a lot of things were outdoors back then, if you
yep,
remember. But for us, a lot of shows were outdoors, and numbers were really strong. And we were like, okay, this is good. But then 22 happened, and it's one of those things where it's like, man, can you put yourself back in 22 and think about like all of the things that were happening? Restrictions were coming back into place. Venues were being like, like employees got COVID and we got to shut down. I mean, we had shows cancel. I mean,
Yep.
22 was a weird, messy year. So
No,
that's
20,
when it really started to
21 was
open up my eyes.
21 was a strong year for us and for a lot of bands. And then, like you said, 22 shrunk a little bit. And it's like, okay, why? What's going on? Yeah.
Yep. And then 23 was definitely a little hard too. And I honestly, I feel really good about 24 so far. I mean, things have been great. And especially, I can only really speak for myself, but just seeing other things in the market and other bands too, like it seems like it's a good year for some other folks as well.
Yep.
And it's only the beginning of the year. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, me too. And what I've noticed looking at like the people who are coming to shows, I don't know the right way to articulate this. I'll try it. It seems like the folks who are coming out are doing it with more intention than they were pre-pandemic, right? I mean, like 2021, people left their houses because they had to. Like they were sick of being at home. But now people are choosing, people don't just automatically go out on a Friday or Saturday night anymore. But people choose to go out. And when they're out, they're like engaged and happy to be there. It's not just like, well, it's Friday or Saturday, so I'm out somewhere, whatever. And they spend half the night on their phone. Like now it seems like people are a little more aware. Like, wait a minute, I'm not going to take this for granted anymore. I'm here. I want to experience this.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. I see that too.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of younger kids too, which is always the trend, right? There's always going to be kids that are like, turning 18 and then sure, they can go to an all ages show or an 18 and above show rather, or turning 21 and they can finally go to clubs where it's only, or bars, I guess, instead of clubs where it's 21 plus. That happens every year, but I mean, it's definitely, I think it's like some of these kids that are kind of like turning those ages now. I see a lot of those kids out at shows where I think I see some of those kids during the pandemic that were turning those ages kind of just be like, I mean, what's bar culture? Because bar culture didn't exist because they were all shut.
No,
they were
my
shut
kids
down for 2 years,
My kids both turned 21 during the pandemic, and it sucked having to do like an at-home wine tasting for my daughter for her 21st birthday. It was like, we had been making cocktails for 6 months already at home every day.
Unique.
Yeah, how unique, right? Yeah, exactly. But no, it's I agree. 2024 seems like it's shaping up. It is a good year, and it's shaping up to be a pretty strong one in the end. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's good.
So answering one of your other questions from earlier too, about how I handle a lot of the management stuff like logistics, booking hotels, any of that kind of stuff, like from the road or from home rather, is we use this great system. It's an app-based system, but it comes from I think it has its home as a desktop version.
Okay.
And it then later got developed to be used in app form, which we use it as an app form. There's several different platforms. Master Tour is one of them, and Artist Growth Workspace is the other. And we use Artist Growth Workspace, and it's a great place to keep everything organized in one place for the band. Everyone has the app on their phone. It's got the calendar, it's got the shows, it's got all the information, it's got contacts. So all of the things that I get, before the show happens, like on the back end, I just type all that information so that the TM, Asher in this case, has like all that information. But then the band has all that access to that information too. And we've always had things like that before. We've worked with other people that have had different systems in place before as well that were very similar. They function very similar to Artist Growth as well.
Yep.
But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I know that, we're going to be on a run in, DC, Philly, Virginia, blah, 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 whatever. So 3-4 weeks out, I'm planning out, hotels for all of those nights. I'm getting the information. I'm putting it right in there. Yeah, I can see you shared it on the screen here.
Yeah, if you're watching the video, you'll see it on the screen. If you're not, if you're listening to the audio, I've got a link to this in the show notes if you want to go check it out. It's very cool. Yeah.
Yep, those are great. I mean, even just for like keeping track of other things too. There's tabs in there as a manager that are. It's easy to keep track of things like merchandise and show history and assets and assets on hand and so on and so forth. So it's great for someone behind a computer at home like me, and it's also great for someone that's like tour managing on the road
Yep.
and dealing with like changing kind of like inventories, mainly with merch, but also with like deals too. I mean, if someone is settling with someone on the ground, which I'm not settling on the ground with a promoter anymore,
Right.
I can, whoever's TMing or whoever's settling and getting that, that information from the show, like details, you can get that and you can just input it right in on your computer, on your phone. And so that helps. It's just easy to kind of
Keeps everybody on the same page. Yeah.
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 Yep.
The first time I'd heard of either of these was Master Tour a couple of weeks ago. We had Matt Musty, who plays drums in Train, and he mentioned they used Master Tour.
Nice.
I was like, oh, that makes
Master
perfect
Tour's a
sense.
big one.
Yeah.
I looked into that one as well too, and I'm definitely not. I haven't completely written it off, but
Sure.
It's one of those things where for anyone listening that doesn't know, there are free versions, but their free versions come with limitations.
Of course.
But you can subscribe for a certain amount, and so it's one of those things for me where I've just been like, I think I like Artist Growth Workspace, so I'm going to stick with that one. But
Absolutely.
Master Tour seems to be like the Beyonce level,
Got it. Yeah. Right. Right.
Big time like bands are using Master Tour, so it's definitely reputable for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I'm glad to know about both of these, and I'm glad to be able to tell everybody about both of them. That's great. And what a nice way to know, like at the end of the night, somebody's settling with the promoter. You can pull it up on the app and be like, I know what the deal was supposed to be, as opposed to like, oh crap, I can't get in touch with Crisco. I guess whatever you tell me is what the deal is.
Right.
Which,
it's like
we've
2
all
o'clock
seen.
in the morning and
Right.
you can't call me. So
Yep.
it's just like, but the cool thing is that you could also import contracts into it as well. So if you're a band that's dealing with a booking agent that's issuing contracts, you can get those contracts. Someone like me, or even if you don't have a manager and you're in a position where you're self-managing, you can take those contracts and you can upload the PDF or like JPEG images of them right in there too. So whoever's settling at the end of the night can kind of just be like, "Hey, you signed this,"
No questions.
But that,
No.
luckily, I mean, I've been in this business for 10 years and that has never happened. Every promoter that I usually settle with at the end of the night is always on with what the deal is,
I didn't mean to imply that you would want it for that reason. I'm somebody that likes to go into a conversation not clueless, right? So I know the promoter knows the deal. If I'm not the one that negotiated it, but I'm the one that has to settle it, I want to look and make it at least seem like we as an organization are all on the same page together, right? And so walking into that, having looked at the detail, it's like, great, now I can be efficient. I can act professional. They want to work with us again. They don't have to explain the whole deal to me at 2 a.m, right? Like that was more the thought process behind my comment there. But yeah.
And I'll say this too, at the same time as what you were saying here, my piece of advice on that too is take screenshots beforehand, because sometimes you'll play a festival where you're in the middle of nowhere in Virginia and there's no service at the festival, and you'll go to settle and you'll make the mistake that all of us have made where you're just like, what was the deal again? And you have no service and you can't look it up. So always go in screenshotting your deal information, your contract information, so that it's just in your photos.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. It's great
That's
advice.
happened to me so many times. Sometimes where it's like, sometimes you go to a place where you wouldn't even think like that there wouldn't be Wi-Fi or there wouldn't be, data.
Yeah.
And you're screwed.
Oh, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even in venues, if the venue doesn't have Wi-Fi and it's a concrete box, you're basically inside a Faraday cage, and sometimes getting service in there, it's just not going to happen. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, super smart. That's great. That's a good tip. I like that. I like that. So you have evolved from being the drummer in Bellas to the manager of Bellas. Are you managing any other bands at the same time?
Yeah, so all of this actually started, Bellas became a business, and because of that, we started to have, this was back in like 2016, we started to have more responsibilities and a need for like holes to be filled, because it was like, it went
It's
from
a
being
business.
it went from being a band of, friends to, doing stuff to, an actual business. I mean, when contracts started being involved, we were just like, yeah, I mean, this is like,
It's
thinking
great.
back then when I didn't know anything to kind of now, it's like, yeah, it really is. It's a business. So, um,
I mean,
and
it's
so
called the
before we
music
started
business
hiring,
for a reason, right? Like,
exactly, a lot of people kind of forget that too with bands our level. It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's still those things are still in place. Um, yeah, for me, before we started hiring managers and before we even had the money to hire managers, we were always self-managed. We always did, like I said, a hole needed to be filled. Someone had to fill that hole. And it was usually either me or a tag team version, me and someone else, me and Asher, whatever. And so, yeah, because of that, I think I was naturally kind of already in a mindset of handling a lot of things that management usually handles. Um, and so during the pandemic, what happened was I was so unsure of where our industry was going. I mean, this was 2020, and I was kind of thinking like, well, I'm not playing shows, Bella's isn't doing anything, and I don't know what the future holds.
right, right.
So that was a very challenging time, and so I was kind of improvising. I was just like, well, I know I want to stay in this world of music. I've devoted my life to music. And I'm good at this business aspect of it, this right brain kind of, versus left brain kind of thing. It's a blessing and a curse. Not every musician kind of has that, right? So I
Yep,
was just like, maybe I dive into the world of like booking or management. And then I was just like, went into it a little bit more, and I was just like, I don't want to be a booking agent. I don't want to be sending out inquiries. I don't want to be on the phone. I don't want to be like handling massive amounts of emails and trying to, like, it's like, I don't want to be a booking agent. And it kind of just fell into my lap. I was on social media, and a friend sent a post of another friend that was basically kind of just like a call to action. It was just like, hey, my band's like blah blah blah, this, that, and the other thing. Like, I don't think I can handle it. I don't have the bandwidth for it myself anymore. Someone that was also self managing, like all of
yep,
us.
yep,
Do I know any managers? And I kind of had that thought of just like, man, I think this is it. Like, this was 2020, the end of 2020, if I'm not mistaken, early 2021.
yeah,
Still not playing. So I was just like, you know what? I think maybe management. And so I kind of started managing them as a way to see if I could handle doing it,
yep,
and I could. It was going well, and meanwhile, I was still handling everything Bella's, even though we weren't playing. Like, we were still running our business. I was still handling. I was getting grants. Just to stay afloat during all of that time, and so I was still making things happen. Just for the promise for when shows were going to get booked again. We were still
yep,
talking to our booking agent monthly, thinking about like, okay, well, we're staying on top of the trends, and it's looking like vaccines are going to come out in May of 2021, which means that shows it, blah blah blah. So it's like
yeah,
we
right,
were still
right.
working, but we weren't playing.
So
So I was still
smart.
doing all of that work. So I was just like, okay, well, if I take on another band, let me see if I have the bandwidth for it. I did. I still manage them today, and
Which band is that?
it's a band also local to me in the Massachusetts area, and the band is a bluegrass outfit, Mama's Marmalade.
Oh, nice. All right, I'll put a link to them too. Yeah, yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
please, definitely. And they're up to a lot of exciting things as well. I definitely don't mean to talk about Bella's just as, all the time, but Mama's is they're actually going out to Colorado
Nice.
on a nice little tour um, next week. They just got back from Folk Alliance. They got a couple great festival plays coming up as well. Definitely give them a listen. They have a new album coming out. They're a traditional. They have been a traditional style bluegrass band for the better part of 10 years as well.
Yep.
But they just recorded a new album with drums and are actually going to
Huh?
kind of rebrand to be a little bit like folk Americana, with drums, and still have that trad kind of aspect. So it'll be a little bit more of a dynamic show for them, and
Yep.
which is really exciting because they're
Well,
killer. They're
that's what
super
happened.
talented.
That's what happened with Bitter Pill, right? I played a show. It was a it's not even. I don't have time to explain it. It was a theater show that was called Bitter Pill. It was actually a much longer name than that, but everybody sort of shortened it to Bitter Pill.
Sure.
And it was people. It was essentially, it was a trunk show, meaning we played a lot of Billy's originals, and actors and singers would basically do sort of live music videos to these things. And it was a show that happened in Portsmouth. And then that was sort of the beginning of Bitter Pill. And then Bitter Pill evolved into essentially a bluegrass band without drums that played for a while. And then,
Really?
yeah. And then they called me, and I was always in the family because we had always sort of played together, and I'd done other shows with Billy and other members of the band. And then they had a Halloween gig somewhere in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And Billy called me. He's like, "Hey, would you be able to like sit in? We want to kind of up the energy level of this one." And it was like, "Yeah,
No way.
sure."
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." And he's like, like 60% of the songs already. I'm like, "Yeah, I got that. Yep, all good."
Yeah.
And I learned the other ones, and they coached me through the gig because I don't think we rehearsed. Maybe we did. I don't know. And then after that, it was like, "Hey, do you want to play the next one with us?" And after about 3 gigs, I was like, what are we doing here? I just need to know for my schedule. They're like, "Oh yeah, just tell us if you're not available for any of our gigs."
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I'm in the band now. They're like, yeah, you're in the band. I'm like, okay,
I
great.
love that.
Sounds
I love
good.
that. Yeah, that's classic.
Yeah, it's classic, but that's how these things evolve, right? And now that's what Bitter Pill is. Yeah.
That's how you do it too. I mean, having live drums it's not always the vibe. I mean, it's not. It's
No.
not like I'm sitting here saying like, "Oh man, it's got to happen." But
No.
but
And there
in a
are some Bitter
situation
Pill
like
gigs
that,
where I only play like a cajon
like
to keep
brushes
it.
or a cajon, yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
It's tight, man. I mean, like live drums in a venue environment it really adds so much. Whereas when the drums aren't there, it's very acoustic, and
It's
some
different.
aspect of live music definitely gets lost. It's different for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So that's interesting that Mama's Marmalade is taking a similar kind of evolution.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how they like it, how it works out for them, and all that.
Yeah, me too. And as a drummer too, like I'm stoked for them because I'm just like for me, I'm just like, yes, this is great, But
Yep.
also their music was great before it too. I admired everything that they did.
Yeah. Still the first Bitter Pill record had no drums on it.
Nice.
We still play a lot of songs.
Billy a lot too. That's cool to hear that story, that aspect of like where Bitter Pill was coming from, because I could totally see that kind of being like a very theatrical kind of thing.
I always say about Bitter Pill, every one of us at different levels has been involved in theater, and it is such a pleasure taking the stage with a band that understands that live music is a visual art.
Yeah.
And B, how to deliver that visual art, right? It's because one thing to understand it intellectually. It's another thing to just embody it. When you get on stage, you're performing. You're not just playing your songs. It's not the studio, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it's one of the reasons I really love being in this band. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool.
That's great. And I hope you never lose that too. I don't ever want anyone to lose that.
Same. Yeah. Same, very much.
That was a big thing for me. I joined the band and I felt like I was big time performing, because Bella's is like that too. For anyone that doesn't know Bella's, it's like that's Asher's biggest thing ever since I joined, and still to this day. That it's like it's art, right? It's not just Asher's vision has never been like, "Oh, we're just a band. Come watch us play music." We provide visual art at every show, whether it's in the form of stage props or whether it's in the form of actual like performers that are with us on stage, whatever medium it is, whether they're puppet folk or whether they're actually just dancers or whatever, and that was so important for us for so long, and still is. And I felt like towards the end, I was definitely starting to lose a little bit of that, which is why I felt like it was so important for me to kind of like relinquish myself from that role, It's like, we could talk about so many different aspects of why I decided to get out from touring. It wasn't necessarily playing drums. It was really from touring. I was starting to get kind of like tired. It's just doing it for 10 years just was like, it was really hard. And I could say a lot on it too, but that was one of my biggest things where I was just like, I feel like I'm not bringing 100% to the table for this project that deserves 100%.
Yep.
And let me get out of the way. Let me get out of the way to bring hopefully someone in that is going to bring 100%. And I'm really happy with the person that is in the band right now. Kate is playing drums.
Cade was great.
Um,
Cade is a great drummer and a really. I only met Cade the other night because like I did with you, I used his drums, and he's a like really
wild
kind.
drums too.
What's that?
Some wild drums too.
He's got some wild drums, man. Like sitting down at that kit, his cymbals he keeps up so high. I was like, oh, this is like playing Metallica, man. Like, what is this? But it was
Like
fine.
80s. Yeah.
It's 80s style, but thankfully we're both tall, so I didn't have to move a thing. I think the only thing I changed was maybe stool height, and that was it. But it was like, oh yeah, like
years ago, because Kate and I we're in the same area, so like
Got
I
it.
sat in on one of his gigs. He's like, "Oh, you want to come in, like do a song?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." It was like some funk night or something like that in one of our local clubs, and I remember sitting at the kit. It's a regular kit, one up, one down, but the ride cymbal or the crash, I guess, above the ride was so high. I remember being
so
so high.
high.
And
Yes.
it's not even like Cade was doing it for like a showy kind of thing or something. He just liked it. It was just like I like the cymbal being up there, you know?
Yeah, his toms are also up pretty high too. Not, but again, it's just how he plays. I thankfully, like I said, I didn't have any trouble, so it made the switch over really fast.
Nice.
But yeah, when I sat down, I was like, oh, okay, I see what I'm driving tonight. All right,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, back to that, like I feel like everyone in this particular project it gives 100%. And that's
Yep.
I think what every project deserves, right? Whether it's someone that is in the band, someone that's like on the merch table, or someone that's in a position like myself that's handling management. Like you want to be invested 100%, right? Because that
Yes.
like what you put in is what you put out, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
So
That's cool. That's great.
yeah, and
All
so
right.
for me, I felt like if I was putting in like 75, 85% behind the kit, I feel like to some degree that 25% is going to be seen somewhere. That vibe's going to be picked up, caught somewhere, and I don't want that, you know.
Yep. Nope. I played. We played Friday night with Bella's. Bitter Pill did opened up for Bella's. And speaking of performance venues and live music being a visual art, that
That
Bank of New
space,
Hampshire stage
yeah,
in Concord, New Hampshire. I've never played in front of a video wall like that before. That
it's
that was
huge.
crazy, and the
Yeah,
stuff they were putting on it. I mean, I couldn't really see it while we were playing, but people took videos and pictures, and it was like, holy crap! Like they did such a great job. But the next night we played in Rochester, New Hampshire, and it was a 3-band bill, and I played drums in 2 of these bands.
oh wow, you were busy.
The third band needed a drummer for the night, and I was like, I'll just do it, and that way there's no changeover. It's just I'll just play 3 different sets, and it was interesting. But we also did our own sound, and
Yep.
talking about that 25% of your brain that's somewhere else while you're playing. That was definitely happening for me. We had somebody mixing for us, but I was the architect of the system for the night. So I would notice things and be like, how come he's not seeing this crap? Now I got to get his attention, those sorts of things. But
Yeah,
it was interesting playing. Yeah, certainly, like all of us, I've played 3-set nights with the same band. I've played 4-set nights with the same band. We all have. Yeah.
yep.
This was a 3-set night, but it did not feel like a 3-set night with the same band because it was 3 very different. We had Bitter Pill doing our, whatever we call that, like haunted rhythm and bluegrass, and then
that.
yeah, and then Fling is a power pop band, and then this other band that I played with called Vegan Meathead was like 70s riff based rock, so very different styles of music, and I didn't feel like I played one 3-set night. I felt like I played 3 different gigs. Like it was a different headspace. I served a different role. I mean, I played the drums and sang harmonies in each band. Actually, in Fling, I sing some leads. But it was getting home. It was like, oh, this feels different than a 3-set night. Like, huh? It was just interesting. Yeah, yeah. So, yep. Speaking of, are you still playing?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely still playing. So I play drums every day. I'm very fortunate. I mean, I got a great little practice
Oh, nice.
situation
Yeah.
right here in the apartment, but I also have I have a studio that I work and teach out of, and I teach at a school too, so I get I get some kid doesn't show up one day, I get half an hour or an hour to kind of shed a little bit,
That's
which is
great.
great.
Yep.
Aside from just the practicing aspect of it, yeah, I play some pickup gigs in my local area,
Great.
some mostly funk nights.
Yep.
Yeah, and I get to bop around between my two local clubs. I'll just whoever's needs a drummer for the night, kind of. I'm lucky,
That's
I'm in
awesome.
an area
Yeah.
where I can do that. Yeah.
That's great. And did you play percussion at a recent gig with Bellas? Did I hear them half mention that to me the other
Yeah,
night?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the cool thing about like, yeah, I think you said it earlier today. Like obviously, um, you know, this is a great case scenario. The shift, there's no bad feelings or anything like that. It's not like I
Right.
walked away. It was just like, hey guys, I think I want to do this thing that's best for me, which is, stepping away from touring, mental health, et cetera, blah blah blah. But also, I want to, fill in the role as management, which I feel completely competent at, and feel like it would be a good move. And everyone's just like, yeah, I feel like that'd be a great move. And when we were talking about it, I was just like, and there's the cool opportunity for maybe double drums or maybe drums and percussion, and that was exciting to them at the time. And I think that the fact that it finally happened for the first time this weekend, because Kate and I have been planning it, and I think the band obviously knew that it was happening, but we didn't
Sure.
have a rehearsal. We just Kate and I got together and just talked about a couple things, a couple hits, a couple places to be tight in certain sections. But otherwise, it's like I know these tunes, in my
Oh
sleep,
yeah.
like the back of
Yeah.
my hand. So it's like,
Yeah.
so yeah. So Kate and I put a little percussion rig together, which is great, and we did it for Strange Tree because the stage is big enough. And man, it was awesome. It was great. I think I talked to so many people that have seen us before that were in. I mean, people, my former bandmates as well that were kind of
Yeah.
just like, man, that added so much. That was so cool. And I think that was really fun. I think it
They,
was fun for me to be back on stage. It was fun to be reunited with my friends and my former bandmates, and just to kind of just let loose and kind of rip some percussion. Which I've been saying, if you've known me for the past 10 years, you know that I've said that like I would play percussion in a touring band. Yeah, that like no problem. I would play
yep.
percussion over drums like any day. I love drums. I study drums. The drums
Sure.
is like my bleed drums. It's
Sure.
my
Sure.
thing.
Yep.
But like, man, just like playing some percussion with like hands and like just playing a tambourine on 2 and 4 for an entire song. Like I'm so down.
No, I've got one friend locally here. This guy named Stu Dias. He has this project called Diaspora Radio, and he once a month covers an album, and
That's rad.
it's awesome. And he's done all kinds of different things. And I've played drums with him once. We did Rumors, Fleetwood Mac's record. I played drum set for that. But the other projects I've done with him have had a different person on drum set. And we did Speaking in Tongues with the Talking Heads and Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. And I just played percussion and sang harmonies on those. And it is such a freeing thing to be able to just play and use different sounds and textures. And like you said, sometimes it's just a tambourine on 2 and 4, and sometimes it's nothing. Like sometimes it's best to just leave the drum set alone, and oh yeah, that can be a blast. I'm glad they were commenting backstage the other night about, how it was nice to see you looking so happy on stage and like all of that. So yeah. That's great. That's great. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that was special for me, for sure.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. That's good. Yeah. Cool. Well, if people want to find you, how would they find you? Are you looking for other bands to manage if it's the right band? Like, do you want people to contact you about that, or, but either way, how do people find you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I need to, this has all been so new. I mean, we're talking like me, I know I've been managing Mamas since like 2021,
Sure.
but that was almost as a kind of like something I took very seriously for them and still do, obviously, but like, was very upfront about it in the beginning of me being like, hey, I'm stepping into this. So this is going to be a project for me. I need to figure out, like, I want to learn and grow with you to figure out how to do some of the stuff as like an actual manager
Yes.
instead of some of the
Yeah.
stuff that I was doing for Bella's. Point to that is that I need to. I've been talking with someone for the better part of like maybe 4 months now, because this is all new. I mean,
Yeah.
it's July, so it's only been 6 months of me professionally trying to step into, you know, taking this on as a serious role as a manager, for like 6 months now. So I need a website. That whole tangent was basically to say that like I'm building a website. So hopefully someday soon we'll have a URL which I can share.
Cool. Well, when you have that, let me know, and I'll make sure everybody knows for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as taking on other clients too, to truthfully, like I've had some people reach out and ask about that, and I'm not sure. You know, I'm in a place where I'm really happy with the bandwidth that I have just for Bella's and for Mama's right now. And like I said before, kind of briefly, I teach as well, so my days are very
Yeah.
full
That's great.
in a great way. But I know, and I'm also looking forward to hopefully finding some like regular gigs too in my local area where I can actually kind of play a little bit more too. So so yeah, to answer that question, website coming soon.
All right. Well, can people find you like on Instagram or
On
whatever?
socials, yeah, you can
Yeah.
find me on socials. I think it's Crisco Drums, I think.
I'll link to it in the show notes. It's like Crisco with a long underscore drums is what I found.
Yeah.
So yeah. Cool.
And as far as other socials, I'm not really on any of them.
Perfect. Well, then that makes it easy. There's one spot.
Yeah.
There you go. Cool. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time with us today, Crisco. It's been great catching up. When I knew we had this gig coming up the other night, I did not realize until about a week or so before that you had evolved. And so I was like looking forward to hanging out at the gig, and it was like, oh, it's not going to be Crisco. Okay, all right, But like I said, Cade was outstanding, as you know. So
yeah. This is our hang. Before we leave,
hang. Yeah.
What are this is always the hardest question, I feel like, but what are like 3 things that you're listening to right now that you're really digging on?
Ooh, that's a great question. Man, I've been so with those other 2 bands that fell away, I have been picking up sub gigs with other bands in the month of June. I think I'm playing like 6 gigs in 5 different bands, Bitter Pill being the only one that's got a repeat. And so I have not been listening to music for pleasure all that much.
Yeah.
I've been listening to learn songs.
Exactly. Yep.
My pleasure listening, though, I mentioned this 2 weeks ago in the show, is a different podcast called Strong Songs. Do you know about this?
No, I don't think so.
Dude, it's this guy. His name's Kirk Hamilton. No relation. He dissects a song in each episode, and sometimes he'll do 2, but whatever. But the goal is he dissects one. And he goes into how the song, like his interpretation of how the song came together. And as part of his dissection, he will record each instrument on his own so that he can highlight and be like, here's what the drums sound like alone. Here's what the bass sounds like. Now let's put them together. Or here's what the guitar and the vocal are doing. Or here's how the vocal harmonies work. I have no idea how long it takes this guy to do an episode, but holy crap. I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago after I'd listened to one episode. Since then, I have been totally irresponsible and binged like 8 more episodes when I should have been listening to songs for these bands I'm supposed to fill in with.
So I mean, that almost is kind of in and of itself the answer to my question.
It is totally.
What's it called?
It's called
Songs?
Strong Songs, and it's at strongsongspodcast.com. Yeah, you're gonna love it, and then you're gonna hate me for telling you about it. I've gotten so many notes from listeners that are like, oh, thank you. And then like a week later, like, okay, listen, I've got a problem. I can't stop,
Well, dude, I appreciate it. Cause I try to listen to like, so my goal since like, I don't know, it's been a long time. I listen to an album a day. Mm-hmm. And I'm always like, I'm dedicated to that, whether it's something that like is brand new album, luckily when a new album gets released, or just re-listening to older albums, which most of the time that's like 100, that's like 98% of the time. but like I'm open. I'm always open to new music. But like, yeah, I'm always listening to an album a day, and then that always turns into like then listening to a playlist of the music curated to sound like that album that I was listening to. So that opens the door to some new music, and then also just it keeps the door open to listening to music all day.
Yep.
But that's a big part of my like morning into early afternoon journey, because then I go teach, and then it's just like I'm dedicated to that. So there's no listening involved, and then it's nighttime, so there's no listening at that point. But
yep.
Podcast is such a big part of that for me too, where it's just like, okay, if I'm kind of getting tired, because listening to an album and music a day can be a lot,
It's exhausting. Sometimes. It can be, yeah.
It can be a lot. So you do reach that point where you're just like, I need to kind of substitute this with something else, and podcasts are great. Yeah. And I have so many podcasts that I'm obsessed with, but just on the music related tip, the way that you just talked about this one, Strong Songs.
Yeah.
Is very similar to the way I am with Questlove Supreme, if you've never listened to that.
No, I never have. All right.
So, man, that's one of those things for me where it's just like, I love Questlove, right? Amir Thompson from The Roots. And he's just like an encyclopedia, man. He's such a great host of a podcast alongside like his 4 or 5 co-hosts that are with him. Super knowledgeable folks, and they interview everyone, multi-genres. They're not really just staying in one genre or anything like that. And there's actors. I mean, I think former presidents have even been in. I think he had Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, but wow. But it's so great because that opens up a huge door of like the music industry, and like he's had former managers and stuff like that. So that's a good one. I'm obsessed with that one. And I binge that one constantly.
Yep.
And he's always putting out new episodes. So you can go back to like 2018 or something. There's no shortage of episodes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, the same is true of Strong Songs. I put like, I don't know, 15 of them on my phone. And then I realized, all right, I got to go through the whole catalog and just start adding things. It's like, I
got to check it out. I look forward to that.
My advice is look through the list and find a song that you know and love, and then let him dissect it for you. And that'll be enough of an introduction to tell you whether you like the format or not. And then from there, you realize it almost doesn't matter what the song is. Like it's gonna be your favorite song for the hour that he's telling you about it, right? Like he's so good at what he does, and his enthusiasm just like is infectious. But
I would start with a Stevie Wonder song, probably.
He's got some Stevie Wonder songs in there. I have not listened to any of them yet, but they are queued up. I just finished listening to the one he did on Peter Gabriel's "In Your Eyes."
Nice.
I know the song, obviously. I think I've even played it, and it's a weird song to play, like really hard.
Form-wise or something?
Yeah, but that's the thing, is like, I guess, no, I never have played it, because I never realized that pre-chorus is 11 bars.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Because he adds 3 bars of nothing between that awesome pre-chorus and then drops down into the actual chorus. But it's like, it's brilliant, right? Like, so, yep. And that pre-chorus is off the charts.
I'll go back and re-listen. I love Peter Gabriel.
Same.
Absolutely love Peter Gabriel. I'll go back and listen to that. I love weird form stuff. I was listening to a Green Day song. I listen to so much songs too, because some of the kids that I teach are just like, well, I want to learn this song, and I'm like,
you got to teach it to
learn it.
Yeah.
But I got to teach you how to comprehend the song, and we got to break things down by form. There's A, B, or ABC, or there's verse, chorus, or however you want to break it down. And I was counting out the chorus for this kid in a Green Day song. It was I can't think of the name of the song. It's the triplet bass, like doom 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 doom.
Is it
Holiday?
Yep.
And I think it was either like the verse or the chorus or something like that. It's 13 bars. I was like, yeah, it'll be like 8 bars or something like that, because you always think even.
Yeah, of course.
And then as I'm counting it, I'm just like, no, I think it's 13. It's 13.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool though. Like these things these devices that songwriters use, and you don't, unless you're dissecting it, you don't think about it. You don't realize.
Think about it. Yeah.
So. Cool. Well, thank you. I don't want to monopolize your day here. Thank you so much for spending all this time with us. Do you, of course, stay in touch, and let's, we'll have you back on in like 6 months and hear how things have evolved once you got your website rolling and all that good stuff. So, thanks so much. And do you have like 3 words that you might want to share with our audience before we say goodbye here?
Yes, I do. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Always be performing.
That'll work. Love it. Folks, thanks so much for listening. Crisco, thanks for coming on. We'll see you next week. Later. Perfect. That was awesome.